Imagine a nation holding its breath, millions glued to their screens, a cricket match. Dreams of victory hanging in the balance.
And before a single ball is bowled, 11 leading astrologers on a national platform confidently predict a win. Some even guarantee a close nail-biting finish.
Yeah, it really illustrates just how deep the roots of astrology run, even in a world supposedly driven by logic and reason.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
And this deep dive that you requested takes us right into the heart of astrology, particularly in India, this place where the ancient and the modern kind of constantly intertwine. We've got news reports, scientific papers, we even got an account from an ex-astrologer, all adding these layers to this complex picture.
An interesting mix of sources allowing us to examine not just the claims, but also the psychological and cultural factors that contribute to its appeal.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with that cricket match. It was the T20 World Cup semifinal, India versus England.
The nation held its breath, every run, every wicket analyzed.
And then the unthinkable happened.
Yep. A crushing defeat for India, a completely one-sided match. England achieved the target with an ease that even surprised them, prompting the Guinness World Records to question if it was the easiest run chase in history.
And here's the kicker. Those 11 astrologers who unanimously predicted a win, they were left speechless.
Yeah.
Their pronouncements just shattered by the reality of the scoreboard.
It really is a stark illustration of the unreliability of astrological predictions, even when made by the most renowned practitioners.
And it's a pattern we see again and again throughout history, isn't it? Failed doomsday prophecies, inaccurate pronouncements, yet people still flock to astrologers seeking guidance.
It speaks to a fundamental human need, doesn't it? A yearning for certainty in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable.
Let's take a trip back in time, explore some of these failed prophecies. We've got Johannes Stoffler back in the 16th century, confidently predicting a world-ending flood.
Then there's David Meade, more recently, claiming a hidden planet would collide with Earth, causing widespread destruction.
And who could forget Harold Camping? Not once, but twice he set dates for the apocalypse, even going as far as booking billboards to spread the word.
The irony is when his predicted date in May 2011 passed without incident, he simply adjusted the date to October of the same year, highlighting a peculiar tendency to cling to beliefs even in the face of contradictory evidence.
But the one that truly gripped the global imagination was that Mayan calendar prediction.
Yes, 2012, the year the world was supposed to end, all based on misinterpretations of an ancient calendar system.
And it wasn't just a fringe belief. A Reuters poll at the time found that a staggering 1 in 7 people worldwide actually believed in this impending doom.
It really underscores the power of a compelling narrative, particularly one that taps into our primal fears and desires for answers.
But here's where things get interesting. We've got science weighing in on this whole debate. Nobel Prize-winning chemist Dr. Venkatraman Ramakrishnan has debunked the very foundation upon which astrology stands.
His conclusion is clear. There's simply no scientific basis for the claim that the positions of planets at the time of our birth can influence our lives.
What about the argument that planets exert a gravitational force on us? Surely that must have some impact.
It's a common misconception, but Dr. Ramakrishnan dismantles it effectively. He reminds us that gravity is determined by mass and distance, not your birth date. The gravitational pull of the doctor delivering you is significantly stronger than that of distant planets. It's simple physics.
So it's not like Mars is going to give you a special career boost just because you're Capricorn.
Precisely. The argument is logically flawed. To illustrate this, consider two individuals born in the same hospital, one in January, the other in July. Would the sun's gravity discriminate based on their birth months? Of course not.
Okay, so if gravity isn't the answer, what about all these intricate astrological charts and calculations? Do those hold up to scrutiny?
Not really. Astrology is filled with internal contradictions which become quite apparent when you delve into the specifics. Imagine 3 individuals. Bunty Babley and Bablu Bunty is born in late January, Babley in mid-February. Despite being born almost a month apart, they share the same horoscope because they both fall under the Aquarius sun sign.
But shouldn't their horoscopes be at least slightly different, given the time gap between their births?
Logically, you'd assume so, but here's where the inconsistency lies. Babley born just one day after Babley has a completely different horoscope because he's a Pisces. So, 2 individuals born a month apart share the same destiny, but those born a day apart are on vastly different paths. It simply doesn't hold up to logical scrutiny.
It's almost as if your fate is determined by some kind of cosmic roll of the dice.
And then there's the case of twins, often cited as a prime example of astrology's shortcomings. If the precise moment of birth dictates our personality and destiny, you'd expect twins to lead remarkably similar lives.
But anyone who knows twins, or is a twin themselves, knows that that's rarely the case. They can have vastly different personalities, interests, and life trajectories.
Exactly. This anecdotal observation is backed up by a fascinating study conducted in London in 1958. Researchers followed over 2,000 children born at the same time, meticulously tracking their lives over decades. They examined everything from their careers and personalities to their IQs and accomplishments.
And what did they find?
Absolutely no correlation. These individuals born under essentially identical astrological conditions led vastly different lives, directly contradicting the notion that birth time is the defining factor in shaping our destinies.
So if our fate isn't predetermined, what's the point of all these astrological remedies and solutions that are often offered?
That's a question that exposes another layer of absurdity within the world of astrology, the idea that you can somehow alter a preordained fate through rituals or actions.
You mean like the advice from Nirmal Baba, who suggested eating green chutney with samosas for good luck?
Precisely. Or the belief that simply adding an extra R to your name can somehow appease the planets and attract fortune.
If your future is truly written in the stars, how can something as trivial as adjusting the spelling of your name possibly change it?
It's a glaring logical inconsistency that many conveniently overlook. But it raises a crucial point. If these remedies truly worked, wouldn't astrologers themselves be living exceptionally fortunate lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If they can predict everything from election outcomes to the success of a film, why aren't they using their cosmic insights to amass fortunes in the stock market or consistently win lotteries?
Well, because the reality of their lives often contradicts the image they project. Most astrologers don't live in extravagant wealth. Instead, they rely on the fees paid by clients seeking guidance and reassurance.
So we've established that astrology has a shaky track record, lacks scientific backing, and even contradicts itself. Yet millions of people across the globe still swear by it.
One perspective offered by Swami Vivekananda suggests that such beliefs are indicative of a weak mind, a crutch for those who crave certainty in a world filled with uncertainty. He argued that people turn to astrology because they find it easier to believe that their fate is predetermined by the stars than to accept the responsibility of shaping their own destiny.
It's a comforting thought, isn't it? To believe that someone or something is charting our course through life.
But it's not just about weakness or a desire to relinquish control. There are also some clever psychological techniques at play. Astrologers, for example, are often masters of something called cold reading.
For our listener who might not be familiar with the term, could you explain what cold reading is?
It's the art of making vague, generalized statements that can apply to almost anyone. For instance, an astrologer might say, "You have so much untapped potential," or "A childhood incident has significantly shaped your life."
Those statements are so broad they could apply to practically everyone.
Exactly, and that's precisely the brilliance of it. Because they're so general, people can easily project their own experiences and anxieties onto these statements and find meaning in them.
It's like looking into a hazy crystal ball that reflects back what you want to see.
And it's not just about the words themselves, it's also about the delivery. Astrologers often exude charisma and confidence, creating an aura of authority and mystique that enhances the believability of their pronouncements.
So it's a blend of psychological manipulation and skillful showmanship.
Precisely. And there's another layer to this, the Barnum effect, also known as the Forer effect. It's our inherent tendency to readily accept information that confirms our existing beliefs and to perceive ourselves as unique and special.
So even if an astrological reading is full of generalities, we're prone to lash onto the parts that resonate with us and dismiss the rest as irrelevant.
It's a cognitive bias that astrologers can exploit to their advantage. They're essentially playing on our innate desire to feel understood and to believe that our lives have a deeper meaning.
But it's not all smoke and mirrors, is it? Some astrologers genuinely possess a keen ability to read people, don't they?
Absolutely. Some are incredibly perceptive and intuitive. They pick up on subtle cues from your body language, your tone of voice, even your attire, and weave those observations into their readings.
It's like they're assembling a complex puzzle, piecing together tiny details to form a portrait of who you are and what you're experiencing.
Precisely. And this is where it becomes tricky, because it blurs the line between genuine insight and calculated manipulation. It's challenging to discern whether they're tapping into some mystical cosmic knowledge or simply using their powers of observation to make educated guesses.
Right. It's like a mentalist who seemingly reads your mind, but is actually employing a combination of psychology and trickery.
Exactly. This is precisely why it's crucial to cultivate critical thinking skills, to question our assumptions, and to approach information with a healthy dose of skepticism, especially when it comes to matters that can influence our lives and decisions.
So how do we strike a balance between maintaining an open mind and being appropriately skeptical?
It involves recognizing our own biases, being willing to consider alternative viewpoints, and consistently seeking evidence. If someone makes a claim, what's the basis for that claim? Is it supported by scientific research or simply anecdotal evidence?
A good point to remember. And as the saying goes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Precisely. And remember, seeking guidance and support is perfectly normal, but it's crucial to choose sources that are credible and ethical.
So rather than relying on the stars to reveal our future, perhaps we should focus on developing our own inner compass, our own sense of intuition and discernment.
That's a powerful concept to cultivate our own inner wisdom and make choices aligned with our values and aspirations.
Before we delve too deep into philosophy, let's circle back to our deep dive. We were discussing the tactics employed by astrologers, and we haven't even touched on the dark side of the industry, outright fraud.
Ah, yes. The unfortunate reality that some individuals exploit others' vulnerabilities for personal gain.
Our source material highlighted a particularly unsettling example, the case of Shyam Manav and the rickshaw driver.
That was a chilling illustration of the lengths to which some astrologers will go to deceive their clients.
For those who may have missed it, could you recap what happened?
Shyam Manav, dedicated to debunking superstitions, went undercover to expose a well-known astrologer. On his way to the astrologer's office, he rode in a rickshaw, and the driver began asking him a series of unusually personal questions, almost like an interrogation.
Sounds like he was fishing for information.
Exactly. Manav, sensing something was amiss, provided the driver with false information, claiming to be an English professor from Nagpur University.
I'm guessing the astrologer then used that fabricated information to make it seem like he knew Manav personally.
You guessed it. Upon Manav's arrival at the office, the astrologer dramatically summoned the English professor from Nagpur University to come forward.
Wow, what a carefully orchestrated setup.
It clearly indicated that the rickshaw driver was colluding with the astrologer, feeding him personal details about his passengers to enhance the credibility of his readings.
That's incredibly unethical and a complete betrayal of trust.
It underscores the importance of being discerning about who we trust and where we seek guidance. Not everyone who presents themselves as an expert has our best interests at heart.
Right. And it's a reminder that skepticism is a healthy defense mechanism, especially in a world where information is so easily manipulated.
Yeah, it certainly highlights the need for vigilance. We can't just take things at face value, can we? Especially when it comes to matters as personal as our lives and our destinies.
It's a sobering reminder that critical thinking isn't just some academic exercise. It's a vital skill for navigating the real world.
Absolutely. So, how do we protect ourselves from these kinds of scams? What are some red flags to look out for?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's essential to be wary of anyone who guarantees specific outcomes or claims to possess these special powers.
Promises of instant wealth, miraculous cures, or guaranteed happiness should always raise a red flag.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Precisely. And it's always wise to do your research. Don't just rely on testimonials or anecdotes, which can easily be fabricated.
Right. Look for evidence-based information, consult with experts in relevant fields, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Skepticism is a healthy defense mechanism in a world where information is often manipulated for profit or personal gain.
So in a sense, we need to become our own detectives, carefully evaluating the claims and credentials of anyone offering guidance or solutions.
It's about empowering ourselves to make informed decisions rather than blindly following someone else's lead.
Speaking of informed decisions, let's shift gears a bit and delve deeper into the psychological factors that contribute to astrology's enduring appeal.
The human mind, a fascinating and often perplexing landscape.
We've already touched upon the Barnum effect and how astrologers exploit our desire to feel understood and special.
But there's another intriguing aspect to consider: the comfort that astrology can provide in times of uncertainty and anxiety.
I can see that. When we're facing difficult choices or feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges, it can be tempting to seek answers outside of ourselves.
And astrology offers a seemingly simple and appealing solution. It promises a glimpse into the future, a sense of order amidst chaos.
It suggests that our lives are guided by some cosmic plan, which can be reassuring for some, especially those struggling with feelings of powerlessness or a lack of control.
This is where the symbolic language of astrology comes into play. Even for those who don't believe in its literal truth, the archetypes and narratives it provides can offer a framework for understanding their experiences.
It's like finding a familiar map in unfamiliar territory, providing a sense of direction, even if the map itself isn't entirely accurate.
Precisely. And this is why it's important to approach astrology with a nuanced perspective, recognizing its potential psychological benefits, even as we acknowledge its lack of scientific validity.
It's about understanding why people find comfort and meaning in these belief systems, even if we don't personally subscribe to them.
Empathy over judgment, I'd say.
Well said. But let's not forget that there's a darker side to this as well.
You're referring to the unethical practices we had discussed earlier.
Exactly. The manipulative tactics, the outright fraud, the exploitation of vulnerability.
It's a reminder that not all who claim to offer guidance or insight are doing so with pure intentions.
So how do we distinguish between genuine astrologers, those who truly believe in what they're doing, and those who are simply preying on people's hopes and fears?
It's a difficult question to answer definitively. However, there are some clues to look out for.
For example?
Well, be wary of anyone who pressures you into expensive consultations or remedies.
Right. A genuine advisor should be focused on helping you, not emptying your wallet.
Also pay attention to their language. Are they making specific testable predictions, or are they relying on vague generalities?
As we've discussed, those vague pronouncements are a hallmark of cold reading, a technique used to create the illusion of insight.
And perhaps most importantly, trust your gut instinct.
If something feels off, if you're uncomfortable with the astrologer's approach or demands, don't hesitate to walk away.
You have the right to choose who you trust and how you seek guidance.
Now, shifting back to the broader context of our deep dive, I'm curious about your perspective on something.
Go on.
We've been exploring the flaws and fallacies of astrology, but what about the cultural significance it holds, particularly in India?
It's an important aspect to consider. Astrology is deeply interwoven with Indian culture, history, and tradition.
It's not just a fringe belief system, it's often integrated into major life decisions, from choosing marriage partners to starting new ventures.
And this raises complex questions about how we navigate the tension between tradition and critical thinking.
Should we simply dismiss these traditions as outdated superstitions? Or is there a way to acknowledge their cultural value while still encouraging a critical and informed approach?
It's a delicate balance. I believe that respecting cultural traditions doesn't mean blindly accepting them without question.
We can appreciate the historical and social context while also engaging in open and honest discussions about the validity of these beliefs.
Ultimately, it's about fostering a culture of critical thinking where individuals feel empowered to examine their beliefs and make informed choices.
So it's not about forcing people to abandon their traditions, but rather encouraging them to think critically about those traditions and to make decisions based on reason and evidence.
Precisely. It's about promoting a healthy skepticism without disrespecting cultural heritage.
Now, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the psychological comfort that astrology can provide.
The allure of certainty in an uncertain world.
Exactly. It makes me wonder if, in a way, the popularity of astrology reflects a deeper societal anxiety.
Perhaps. In a world bombarded by information overload, economic instability, and global uncertainties, it's understandable that people would seek a sense of stability and control.
And astrology, with its promise of cosmic order and predetermined paths, can appear to offer that stability.
It provides a framework for understanding the complexities of life, even if that framework is ultimately based on flawed premises.
So it's not just about individual psychology, it's also about the broader cultural and societal context.
Precisely. The popularity of astrology can be seen as a reflection of the anxieties and uncertainties that permeate our collective consciousness.
Which brings us back to the question of personal agency.
The power to shape our own destinies.
Exactly. If we reject the notion of a preordained path, if we acknowledge that the stars don't dictate our fate, then where do we find meaning and purpose?
The answer, I believe, lies within ourselves. It's about cultivating self-awareness, defining our values, and making choices that align with our aspirations.
It's about embracing the uncertainty of life as an opportunity for growth and exploration.
It's about recognizing that we are not passive recipients of fate, but active creators of our own realities.
It's a powerful and empowering perspective, isn't it?
Indeed. And one that resonates deeply with the spirit of critical thinking and scientific inquiry.
So as we delve deeper into this deep dive, let's keep that perspective in mind. It's not just about debunking astrology, it's about empowering ourselves to live more meaningful and fulfilling lives.
It's about harnessing the power of reason and evidence to navigate the complexities of the world and to create our own paths guided by our own values and aspiration.
Now, before we wrap up this segment of our deep dive, I want to touch upon one final point that often arises in discussions about astrology.
I'm listening.
The question of free will versus determinism.
The age-old philosophical debate.
If our lives are not predetermined by the stars, as astrology suggests, does that mean we have complete free will?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Some argue that free will is an illusion, that our choices are ultimately determined by a combination of genetics, environment, and unconscious processes.
Others maintain that we do have a degree of free will, that we can make conscious choices that shape our lives.
It's a debate that has raged for centuries, and one that we're unlikely to resolve definitively in this deep dive.
However, I believe that even if our choices are influenced by factors beyond our conscious control, we still have the ability to make decisions that align with our values and goals.
We may not have absolute control over every aspect of our lives, but we can choose how we respond to the challenges and opportunities that come our way.
It's about taking ownership of our choices, even within the constraints of our circumstances.
And perhaps that's a more empowering perspective than the notion of a preordained destiny.
Indeed. It's about recognizing that we are not simply passengers on a predetermined journey, but active participants in the creation of our own lives.
So as we move into the final segment of our deep dive, let's keep this question of agency and free will in mind.
It's a thought-provoking lens through which to examine not only astrology, but also our broader understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
And with that, we'll take a short break and return for the final part of our exploration into the world of astrology.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The tension between seeking certainty and embracing the unknown.
We crave answers, but maybe the real journey lies in learning to live with the questions.
Perhaps the quest for certainty is in itself a form of uncertainty avoidance.
And maybe that's where the true value of critical thinking lies, in equipping us with the tools to navigate that ambiguity and to make informed choices even when we don't have all the answers.
It's about recognizing that the absence of certainty doesn't equate to a lack of meaning or purpose.
You know, we've delved into the history of failed predictions, the lack of scientific backing, and the psychological tactics used to persuade people. But I think for me, the most compelling aspect of this whole deep dive has been the exploration of that human need for meaning and connection.
It's a fundamental aspect of the human experience, isn't it? This search for significance, for belonging, for a sense of purpose.
And while astrology might offer this seductive illusion of certainty, I think the real empowerment comes from within, from cultivating our own inner compass and taking responsibility for our choices and actions.
It's about recognizing that we are not passive observers in the grand cosmic play, but active participants shaping our own narratives through our intentions, decisions, and actions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of astrology, what key takeaways would you leave our listener with?
I'd encourage them to embrace curiosity, to question assumptions, and to cultivate a healthy skepticism.
To seek knowledge from credible sources, to distinguish between evidence and opinion, and to be wary of those who claim to hold all the answers.
And perhaps most importantly, to remember that the stars might twinkle above us, but they don't dictate our fate.
The power to shape our destinies to create meaningful lives lies within each of us.
It's a journey of exploration, of learning, of growth, and ultimately of embracing the unknown with courage, curiosity, and a commitment to shaping our own narratives.